Hey, welcome everyone. Today we are going to talk about how to install Angular and make your first app. So the first thing we need to do is you need Node.js. So if you have Windows, you got the Windows installer. If you got on Mac, you got the Mac OS installer. If you're on Linux, you got the source code. Me personally, I like to use Ubuntu Linux, so I can show you how to install Node.js from the terminal on Ubuntu. But if you have Windows or Mac, it should be pretty easy to do via the installer. So let's get into this. Okay, here we are. We're going to open up a terminal. First thing we're going to do is a sudo apt update to make sure we have the most recent packages on our local machine. And okay, great. Now let's do a sudo apt install Node.js, and here we go. We're getting Node.js right now. Okay, so that installed pretty good. So what we'll do is we'll just check the version with a node-v. And we're on the latest version, so that's great. With this latest version did come npm. So we're going to do a sudo npm install -g at angular/CLI to get the Angular command line. And that installed very quickly. So that was great. Now if you want to create your first app, let's change directory into, we currently have a directory called Angular. And then you can do an ng new my-first-app, and that will create all of the necessary packages to make your first application on Angular. They do really make it easy to get up and running quick. Of course you have to customize it yourself, but installing it and getting it hosted is easy peasy. Okay, so it did complain a little bit because we don't have a Git account, but we don't really care about that right now. So what we can do is change directory into my first app, run the command ng serve --open, and this will serve our website and open it for us. So we'll get a little preview of our own first app that we just created in under like 3 minutes. So that's pretty good. So here it is. It's just boilerplate code. Obviously we have to edit this, but we successfully created an app and served it on localhost. So let's move on to the next step. Okay, so since we have the app installed, we're going to need an IDE to edit that. So Visual Studio Code is typically recommended by Angular developers, and I actually prefer it myself. So we can see here we have a Windows, a Linux, and a Mac installer, similar to Node. I can show you how to install it on Windows and on the Snap Store for Linux on Ubuntu. I don't actually own a Mac, so you're on your own for that one, but I'm sure you could figure it out with the installer. So here we go on my Windows machine. I'm going to go to code.visualstudio.com. I'm going to download the stable version. Yeah, go through a typical Windows installer. Yep. Next. You can choose these couple options if you prefer. It does make it a little bit easier once you know the shortcuts for opening code later. Okay, so now that's installed on Windows. We can double check to make sure that everything's working good, which it looks great. So no worries there. So let's get some VS Code on Ubuntu Linux. If you are a Linux fan, here we go. We're going to go to the Ubuntu software Snap Store, search up VS Code, and we see a couple options. We see code and we see code insiders. If you're not really familiar with this, Code Insiders is basically like a beta version of code. They release a new update every month, and they want you to report bug fixes and things like that. If you're into that, you can do the Code Insiders, but for my purposes, I usually just prefer to go with regular code. That way I make sure I got the stable version and don't have to worry about any issues. So let's just verify. Yep, we have VS Code on there. Now we can change directory into our working directory for my first app, and this is a cool shortcut. If you do code dot, it will open up VS Code with your project. So that's much easier than going to like open my workspace or something like that. You can see here we have all of our files that we need. These were all created by that ng new command that we ran, and in later videos we'll get into the details of customizing all of this, but for now just know that that's a nice shortcut to do the code dot in your working directory from the command line or from the terminal, and you can get in there. Okay, so that's pretty cool. I mean, we were able to host that on localhost, but let's get this to like a web host now. So we can go and search for FileZilla and get the FTP client. Enter your sudo password here on Linux, and basically the idea is we want to FTP our files to the web server so that it's hosted for everybody. And okay, so we got the FTP client installed. Let's just make sure it's on there. Cool, let's add it to our favorites. There it is. Yep, everything's working good. Okay, great. So now what do we need to do to FTP our Angular app to the server? So you'll find that with most Angular apps you just need to change directory into the working folder. So we're going to go into my first app, and you can run a command ng build, which will build your Angular application. This makes all of the necessary files that you need, and it creates a new folder called dist, and that's kind of important. So when you host this on a web server, you just need to upload all of the files from the dist directory to your target directory on your external web host. So here we'll connect to the FileZilla client and to the website host externally. Let's and we'll find the right directory here. Dist. Yep, my first app. We'll select everything, and then on the hosting side we'll find the right directory and we will copy everything over. And I really like this feature about FileZilla. It lets you choose what you want to do. So I'm going to say overwrite if source newer only for this query only. Yep. And great. So now those new files would be live on our web host. Not too bad to do. You can get into some fancy stuff with Dockerized containers and Kubernetes and things like that. We'll do that in the future. But for now, what I use is GreenGeeks as my host, and I have been using them since 2008 or 2009, pretty much since they've started. And they've had the best prices that I could ever find, and they are 300% green energy consumption. They got prices for like $3. Even their premium prices, $8.95, under $10 a month. You get excellent features. They use some great things like the industry standard of cPanel for their control panel. You can do one-click installation of over 150 apps. They use Softalicious apps installation, if you're familiar with that. They got backups. They got so much support. I've used them for support for years, and they've always been quick to respond. You can choose your PHP version. They use MySQL databases, and I have nothing to complain about for GreenGeeks for over 15 years of use with them. And you can see right here that they're EPA certified since 2009 as a green power partner. So within their first or second year, they were able to achieve that certification, and they've maintained that for another dozen years or more. So they're a really good host. Price is good, and they're very reliable. So I highly suggest that you use them.